Lift every voice and sing till all the heavens ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise. The listening sky. Oh, let it resound. Let it resound as the rolling sea, the rolling sea.
Lift every voice and sing in spite of hatred. Sing, echoing justice and love and unity. Let music swell the breeze, swaying through all the trees. Each voice a call to make all people free. Let God's love flow from the lips of each sister and brother. Let wise words drip from the lips of each father and mother. Let us sing freedom song, melody loud and strong. This is a call. To join this prayerful throng. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught. Sing a song full of dark past has sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far, brought us on the way, thou who hast by thy might into the light, keep us forever in the path. Lord, we pray, shadow be singing neath thy hand, neath thy hand. May we forever stand true to our God, true to our land, true to our God, we will be true to our God, true to our name.
Good morning and welcome to Shaw University's 2022 celebration of the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Will you join me now in an invocation that is taken actually from an invocation given by and recorded by Dr. King in 1953. This shall serve as our invocation and launch for this amazing celebration on today. Shall we pray together? Oh God, make us willing to do your will, come what may. Increase the number of persons of goodwill and moral sensitivity. Give us renewed confidence in nonviolence and the way of love as Christ taught. And to King's Prayer, I add, we need your blessing, your guidance, and your impartation for this service of celebration. Bless all participants as we welcome our president and we welcome Mr. Shaun King to lead us in a lively dialogue. Bless our students. We pray this, pro Christo et humanitate, for Christ and humanity. Amen. We shall now hear from our student government president, Mr. Tyrese Perry.
Good morning. I'm Tyrese Perry, the Student Government Association President for Shaun University. I'm pleased that you all have chosen to join us this morning to celebrate our annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebration, presented by Shaun University's Center of Racial and Social Injustice. This morning, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce the president of Shaun University, Dr. Paulette Dillard. For those of you who are joining us for the first time or who are new to our university, I will briefly share some of the details about her and her background. Dr. Dillard earned a BS in biology from Barbara Scotta College, an MS in biology from Tennessee State University, and an MBA from the Jack Macy School of Business at Belmont University, and a PhD in biological sciences as she completed postdoctoral training at the Center of Cancer Research and Therapeutic Development at Clark Atlanta University. Prior to her appointment as president, Dr. Dillard served as vice president of academic affairs and the dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. Among Dr. Dillard's many board affiliations are the Dorothea Dix Conservancy, the Downtown Raleigh Alliance, and Carolina Small Business Development Fund. Serving as the 18th president of Shaun University, Dr. Dillard is a scientist, educator, and astute businesswoman. For those of you who do not know Dr. Dillard and are already familiar with our campus community, then you also know that Dr. Dillard is a powerful leader, a strong advocate for student leadership and activism in matters of racial and social justice. I am grateful to her continual encouragement and support, and for her strong leadership for this university. I am proud to introduce you to this morning, President of Shaun University, Dr. Paulette Dillard. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to our annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day program. This year it is presented by Shaun University Center for Racial and Social Justice. First, let me thank our Student Government Association President, Mr. Tyrese Perry, for that wonderful introduction. He is serving as one of our most visible student leaders. We are so proud of our students for their commitment and resilience during these challenging times, and for their willingness to join us in honoring the past and the accomplishments of those who have gone before us. On behalf of the Shaun University Board of Trustees, our administrative cabinet, faculty, staff, students, and entire campus community, we extend our heartfelt welcome to all of you on this occasion to honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This is an annual celebration at Shaun University, and we do it for many reasons. We honor the work of Dr. King because he was not a stranger to Shaun University. The Civil Rights Movement, the formation of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, and countless historical figures who have helped to shape the movement and the realities of the struggle for the Black and Brown communities and to help keep King's dream alive. And so we do this commemoration so that we do not forget. We want to be reminded, in the words of Dr. King himself, that education must enable one to sift and weigh evidence, to discern the true from the false, the real from the unreal, and the facts from fiction. And once you are educated, in the words of that great poet, Dr. Maya Angelou, you do better when you know better. And education, what we do at Shaun, is the formation of being able to know how to do what is right. This year, we are focusing our conversation on change. We will highlight the change that came because of the dogged determination and the fearless leadership and inspiration provided by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We will discuss the power of change at every level of our society, how each of us has something to offer, and how things will stay the same until someone demands that they change. We will encourage our students, activists, leaders, and advocates to pursue change for the better. Because collectively, we have the skills, knowledge, power, and passion, and the responsibility to make a change. Finally, our guest speaker today is a powerful force for change. He is the author of a book entitled Make Change: How to Fight Injustice, Dismantle Systemic Oppression, and Own Our Future. He's going to talk about the necessity of change and how the life of Dr. King influenced people of every race, color, and creed then and now. Today, as we celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and all that he did for this nation and this world, we will also honor his memory by making our own renewed commitment to continue making change and to continue his pursuit for justice. Thank you, and we appreciate all of you being here.
Good morning. My name is Jamelia Pinder, and I currently serve as your Miss 1865 and a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Mr. Shaun King. As a magnetic element of the Black Lives Matter movement, Shaun King helps us see our present place in the larger current of American history. Recently hailed by Time magazine as one of the 25 most influential people in the world on the internet and author of Make Change: How to Fight Injustice, Dismantle Systemic Oppression, and Own Our Future, Shaun's strength is in how he rallies and unites people of disparate backgrounds, becoming one of the most renowned activists in America in the process. The founder and CEO of the North Star, a new digital version of abolitionist Frederick Douglass's iconic journal, and host of The Breakdown, King uses his platform to unearth the truth beyond local media and to organize in purposeful and directed ways. Moreover, he reminds us that we can take whatever we do best, whether we lobby, speak, litigate, organize, write, or more, and tilt that practice toward justice. In 1999, he became the youngest student government president elected at Morehouse College since Dr. Martin Luther King was a student there in 1947. Before he was ever known nationally, King was a high school history and civics teacher in Atlanta, then a traveling teacher and counselor at a dozen different jails, prisons, and youth detention centers in Georgia, speaking and teaching 5 times a day, 5 days a week for years. King started and pastored a church in inner city Atlanta and launched several award-winning social good campaigns that raised millions of dollars for causes around the world. As a speaker, King offers an articulate and historically grounded take on the most pressing problems of the day, He has now spoken in 35 states on over 100 college campuses, in jails and prisons, and in corporate boardrooms, always calling for us to be better and do better. As a writer, he has written an astounding 1,500 articles on injustice. King is currently a writer in residence at Harvard Law School's Fair Punishment Project and contributes to The Intercept and The Appeal. Previously, he contributed to the New York Daily News, Daily Kos, and Tom Joyner Morning Show, and the Young Turks. In 2018, King founded Real Justice PAC, which supports progressive candidates running for district attorney offices, and relaunched Frederick Douglass's The North Star. Shaw University is pleased to present Mr. Shaun King as our speaker for our annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebration.
Thank you so much, Sister Pender, for that introduction. Glad to be here with all of you, and I'm grateful just to have some time on your schedule. Before all of you came here, I said to most of the staff and some of the student leaders, it was originally scheduled for me to be there in Raleigh at Shaw, and I'm sorry that we can't be there together, but I'm looking forward to a time in the future where we can all be there. Also, shout out to Mr. Perry, the student government president. Being student government president at Morehouse was really my first opportunity to be a leader. And I don't even know if you would know me right now had I not had that opportunity. Before we begin, I just have a few people that I want to thank. I want to thank the Duke Energy Foundation for helping sponsor this event. Of course, I want to thank the brilliant president and CEO of Shaw, Dr. Paulette Dillard. Thank you for having me here, Dr. Dillard. The Board of Trustees and all of the presenters and organizers of this event. And certainly thank you to all of the students of Shaw who are here with us today. You are the lifeblood of this university, and you're what makes this campus work. And so thank you. You've caught me on a frustrated day. I got a note from my assistant who said, Shaun, Shaw is a religious university, so don't cuss. Today is one of those days where I feel like cussing, but because I got that note, I won't. It is one of those days where I know we deserve better than we're getting. We deserve better leadership. We deserve more ethical, forceful leaders. And I'm speaking specifically about the failure to pass voting rights legislation in the Senate yesterday. And as we gather here to honor Dr. King, it's deeper than just ironic that we're here to honor Dr. King, who not only fought, but organized for voting rights in a brilliant way. And I'm gonna talk about that in just a moment, but that we're here to honor Dr. King on the morning after our government in 2022 failed in a way that the government of 1965 did not fail. That our government in 2022, that our elected officials, and I have to be frank, as it stands, the House, the Senate, and the presidency of the United States are controlled by Democrats. And it's not a matter of do they have the votes, it's a matter of do they have the will. They have the votes. Last night, it was proven to us that they lacked the will to do what they needed to do to protect voting rights in North Carolina and all over the country. And we've seen voting rights be damaged in at least 19 states across the country. And I see people, even today, I saw some people in my comments say, I don't understand what you mean, Shaun. Don't we all still have the right to vote if we're 18, if we are in a state that doesn't penalize you for for incarceration. Don't we all have the right to vote? Even that we could spend time to discuss, but what we're talking about is states are drastically limiting polling locations, almost exclusively polling locations in Black and brown communities, drastically cutting the hours available to vote, again, affecting primarily working people who don't have the luxury of coming in and out. They are cutting mail-in voting and easy access to voting. They are putting new ID laws that almost exclusively penalize poor people in Black and brown communities again. And every expert in the voting rights space understands that all over the country, voting rights have been attacked. But the failure last night of the Democratic Party and the Democratic government to pass these voting rights, it has me frustrated, but I want to use it as an opportunity to talk to us, and I'm looking forward to taking your questions, to talk to us about how we actually make change. I wrote a whole book about how change actually works, and my book, Make Change, it's not an autobiography, it's a book about my philosophy of change and how we often think pursuing change looks like something very different than it actually does. And I want to spend some time, maybe just 15 minutes or so, kind of giving you my philosophy of how we actually change the things that we want to see changed. I also first want to honor the history and memory of Ella Baker, who is a revered graduate and alum of Shaw University. And the truth is, if Ella Baker was a man, would probably be a household name in America. Ella Baker was indispensable in the civil rights movement. I want to encourage all of you, students, and even maybe some staff who don't really understand the full nature of who Ella Baker was for the civil rights movement, who she was for Dr. King. She was indispensable for Dr. King. Not only was she a master strategist, but again, had sexism not been such a standard of the day, she would have been on the mic. She would have been leading up front. We often think of her as a background leader, but that was in some ways forced upon her. She went ahead and made the best of what was available to her. But I don't know that we know the civil rights movement as we know it without her. I don't know that we know Dr. King and his accomplishments without her. And I mean that literally, not hyperbole. If you study who she really was and what she meant, times that she saved organizations that were on their last leg. And I don't know that you know Ella Baker without Shaw University. I mean, Shaw was essential for her, and it was essential for her in the way that HBCUs have been essential for tens of thousands of us. I don't know that you would know me had I not had an opportunity to spend 4 years at Morehouse College, a place that was an incubator for me, a place that embraced me and developed me and nurtured me, a place where for at least 4 years, I really didn't have to care about police brutality, not while I was on the campus. For 4 years where I didn't really have to care about white supremacy on the campus, and where I could just focus and think about growing my mind, my heart, my soul, my skills, my network, my friendships. And so I'm grateful to be here in the shadows of great leaders. And Dr. King loved Shaw. Many of you may not know, Dr. King visited Shaw. Dr. King at Shaw regularly mentored students, student leaders, advised them, helped strategize with them on your campus. And so much of what we eventually if you go back to the 1960s, they weren't even using the phrase civil rights movement. Like, we've imposed that phrase back onto the movement. But the thing that we now call the civil rights movement, a lot of that emanated from Shaw's campus, from Shaw's students, from mentors at Shaw. And it all really came from a revolutionary tradition at Shaw, where students felt that they could embrace the burden of leadership and pursue civil rights. We don't see SNCC. We don't see and just to push it a little bit more, I'm a historian. I don't know if North Carolina even has its rich history of HBCUs without Shaw. Almost every president of any HBCU in North Carolina came from Shaw in the early days. And I just said that to say, I want you to understand the history that you are a part of. And I want you, as you fight for change, as you fight for voting rights, civil rights, human rights, equal rights, even if you're just fighting for it in Raleigh, even if you're, and listen, I'm no fool. I also know that Shaw is not perfect. If you're fighting for equality at Shaw, if you're fighting for better housing at Shaw, if you're fighting for financial aid at Shaw, if you're fighting for fair treatment of students at Shaw, I just want you to understand whose footsteps you follow. And you are now deeply attached to this university. And I just want you to understand that that should be a thing of real pride. I want to tell you a quick story, a painful story. In 2014, I had fought for civil rights and human rights most of my life, but in 2014, I was actually working at an environmental charity in Los Angeles. And most of my friends, particularly my friends that knew me in college from Morehouse, still knew me as a civil rights leader. I was a student leader on campus. I got a Facebook message on July 18th of 2014, that a random message from a guy that I hardly knew that changed my life. And he lived in New York and I was living in Los Angeles at the time. And he sent me a link to a YouTube video that had not gone viral. Nobody had really shared it or seen it, that a young man uploaded. And I clicked on the link and I was at my cubicle at my desk. This is before the coronavirus. And it was police in broad daylight on the middle of a busy street in New York, choking a man to death. And you have to go back in time. That's now 8 years ago almost. I had never seen anything like that before. Sadly, because of cell phones, because of the internet, we now see videos of police violence all the time. But at that point, I had never seen anything like that. I had fought against police brutality. I fought when I was a student at Morehouse. There was a young brother named Amadou Diallo, who in 1999 was shot 41 times. He was unarmed, nonviolent, broke no laws, a brilliant young man. And we fought for justice for Amadou, but I never saw what happened to him. A few years before I got that video, I had been fighting for justice for Trayvon Martin, but I didn't see what this man did to Trayvon. And to be frank, even though I don't think I'd ever even seen someone die before. In the hospital, yes, but I'd never seen someone be killed. And I was so shook up by it, which is the actual natural response that we should all have when we see something. We've been desensitized now, that I just felt like, oh my God, I have to do something about this. I didn't know the man's name, but I decided to figure out a way to share the video and to talk about the injustice. We later came to know that man as Eric Garner. And I came to know Eric's daughter, Erica, who herself literally died fighting for her father. She was just 29 years old and had heart failure. 3 weeks after Eric Garner was killed, there was a beautiful young brother named John Crawford, who was shot and killed by police at a Walmart in Ohio. Again, he broke no laws, committed no crimes. Horrible. His girlfriend had just had a baby 2 weeks earlier. A day after that, a teenage boy named Michael Brown was shot and killed in Ferguson. People have wrongly demeaned Michael. Michael he was a boy. First off, he was a child. He had just finished summer school for high school 2 weeks before he was shot and killed. And suddenly, we found ourselves all over the country, not only saying Black Lives Matter, but fighting against police brutality and fighting for what we hoped would be justice for these families. And I literally quit my job and threw myself head first into figuring out how we fight for justice for these families. A few months later, a 12-year-old boy named Tamir Rice was shot and killed. A few months after that, a young brother named Freddie Gray was killed by police in Baltimore. Another young man was shot and killed named Philando Castile. Another man named Alton Sterling. Over and over and over again. And you probably know the names of people who have experienced brutality like this in Raleigh, in Durham, in Charlotte, that I've never even heard of, because police violence, first and foremost, is local. And we fought for justice for all of those families. And when I say fought, we marched, we demonstrated, we organized, we protested, we hashtagged, we created trending topics, we did sit-ins, we did everything we knew to do. And after 3 years of fighting for hundreds of families that had experienced police brutality, not a single one of those families got justice, none of them. And many of my friends who were organizers and activists and myself found ourselves either clinically depressed or almost depressed. It is a hard thing to pour your heart and soul into something day after day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, and not get it. And it caused me to say, are we doing anything wrong? Or is there anything we could be doing differently? Can we change our strategy in a way that might make our work more effective? And let me be clear, we were right to march, we were right to protest, we were right to demonstrate. All of those things should be done, but I had to accept that in this country, people in power are willing to watch us march and protest and demonstrate and hashtag. They're willing to watch that and do nothing. You may or may not know that across the country, many people for voting rights over the past few months had gone on a hunger strike. There's an elder named Joe Madison who has not eaten in 77 days. Let me be real, and this all honor to our elder Joe Madison. They don't care. The people who could vote and legislate voting rights, they literally don't care. If Joe Madison dies of hunger, they don't care about that. Several of my friends were arrested yesterday at the Capitol, including Tamika Mallory and others. They don't care. Joe Manchin does not care. Kirsten Sinema does not care. And let me be clear, President Joe Biden does not care. They are not moved by it. I'm not even insulting them. I'm speaking facts. They're not moved by it. They are not moved by the things that we have traditionally done to move people. And I learned that the hard way, having fought for hundreds of families, pursuing justice and never getting it for years. And so me and many others started asking ourselves, what does justice look like? What does change look like? And how do we actually get it? And I want to share 4 things that you have to do to actually get change. And the beautiful thing is I see so many of you. I see Wanda and Shonda and Latanya and Nina, Dr. Johnson, Anthony, Melody, all of you. I see students on 9 different pages here on my Zoom, 216 of us. And I wish we were there in person so you could see the sincerity in my eyes and better hear the passion in my voice. Almost everything I'm about to tell you, each one of you, I'm looking at you, Sister Pender, you could do this right now. There's nothing I'm about to tell you that is beyond you, that you don't have the skills to do right now. There are 4 things you need to make change. And then after this, I'll take your questions. The first thing that you need to make change is you need people, and they need to be highly energized. You need highly energized people. Now, here's the good news and the bad news. The good news is energy comes in a lot of forms. Energy could be anger. It could be optimism. It could be faith. It could be hope. It could be frustration. To make change, you need highly energized people. We tend to get that part right. You need highly energized people. The good thing is we often get it right. Here's the bad part. Often, when you have highly energized people, again, that could be anger, hope, pain, whatever is fueling your energy. When we have highly energized people, it often dupes us into thinking we're much closer to change than we really are. I've seen it. I have been in marches with hundreds of thousands of people. And in that moment, you could not tell us that we weren't this close to changing the whole world. It felt like it. Because when you have highly energized people, it feels like change is actually a lot closer than it really is. It's because you do need highly energized people, but it's only one of the things that you need. The second thing that you need, I'm going to type this here in the comments, okay? The second thing, or if somebody doesn't mind typing that for me, these points in the comments, I'd appreciate it. The first thing you need is you need people, and they need to be highly energized. The second thing that you need is people. This is where the work begins. The second thing you need is people, and they need to be deeply organized. So let me ask you, I'm going to ask a question, and you can put your answers here in the chat. How many of you were organized by somebody to pass the voting rights bill last night in the Senate? If somebody reached out to you to organize you for that, say so in the comments. I'm not seeing a big rush of comments, right? I'm not blaming you. What I'm saying is, if being frustrated was all we needed for change, we'd have changed the whole world by now. If being angry, hopeful, if that's all we needed, it would be enough, but it's not. We have to be, listen, we have to be highly energized, but we also have to be highly organized. And often our energy, if you see my hands here, our energy is here, but our organization is down here. So we're highly frustrated, poorly organized. Now, the answer is not to bring the energy down. The answer is to bring the organization up. So yes, this voting rights bill failed last night, and that is very frustrating. But let's be frank, there are 220 of us in here. There were probably about 3 or 4 of us that were organized in some deeply meaningful way to help that thing pass. Did the Democratic Party of North Carolina reach out to you? I don't think so. Did the Democratic Party of your county reach out to you to get this thing passed? No. Let me give you 2 ways that you can organize people. And let me get, and Brother Perry and other students, this is like free game for you. When you organize people, it's not just email addresses and phone numbers. So if somebody told me, Shaun, you have an hour to organize the 221 people that are here and your lives depend on it, the first thing that I would ask each of you is, what is the skill that you are particularly good at that you think could help us fight for change? Because right now I'm looking at Shonda and Wanda and Gloria. I'm looking at Mary and Helen and Donnie and Rashawn. All I know is your name, but I have no, you may have a brilliant once in a lifetime skill. I don't even know it. So just as an illustration, think for a quick moment and type in the chat, what is a skill that you have that you think could be pretty useful in fighting for change? Just name a skill, all of you. Dr. Dillard, Dr. Grant, what is a skill? Somebody said research, IT, communication, writing, strategy, messaging. I like this. Somebody said, I don't back down from anybody. See, we need that. Somebody needs to be that person, right? Communication, research, public speaking, influence, critical thinking, dedication. Somebody needs to be dedicated. When the rest of us get down, we need somebody who says, no, 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 we're still holding on. Listen, in a matter of a minute, we are already, and this is an illustration, we're already more organized than we were 2 minutes ago. If we had to, if all of us had to do something like our lives depend on it, now we know the skills in the room. The second thing I would ask, and you don't, and I do this as an illustration regularly, if I had to say, can you find 2 other people to join us? And could you give us their names and information? Could you do that? Could you let me know in the chat? Could you do that? If I said not 10, not 100, but could you find 2 people? Well, here's what would happen. Right now, we're 223 strong, but if each of us found 2 more people, if my math is right, that's 500 more people. We're now 700 plus strong. So in a matter of minutes, all of a sudden, we have an audit of who can do what and who else we can bring to the table, and we'll find out what they can do and what they can bring. Here's the thing. Did anybody do that for you for the voting rights bill last night? No, they didn't. We're highly energized, but we're not deeply organized. We're not. I wish we were. I'm not pointing at you. I'm speaking about myself, about all of us. It's not enough to be angry. You have to be angry and organized. Listen, it's not enough to be hopeful. I'm a man of faith. It's not enough to just have faith. There are other things that have to come along with your faith. You need highly energized people. You need deeply organized people. Here's the third thing. You need a plan, a sophisticated plan that is as substantial as the problem you're trying to solve. You need a sophisticated plan that meets the size and scope of the problem you're trying to solve. Again, since we're here to honor Dr. King, who not only fought for the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, but saw them pass because they organized in ways that worked, let me ask you, do any of you have the plan to pass? Are you aware of what the plan is to pass that voting rights bill? I don't even know what the plan is. What's the plan? I know I wanted to see it pass last night. I know I'm frustrated that it didn't, but that's not a plan. I've traveled, when I wrote my book, I traveled and met with organizers and activists all over the country. And I asked organizers, brilliant brilliant organizers, including in Raleigh, in Durham, in Charlotte, all over North Carolina, all over the South. I traveled to Alaska, Hawaii, deep in Mississippi, all over the country, Montana, California, Texas. And I would ask people to share with me their plan. What's your plan to solve the thing that you're fighting for? And here's what they would do 95% of the time. I would ask them for their plan, and they would begin in beautiful, meticulous detail telling me the problem. And I realized right away that people were confusing the problem with the plan to solve it. Knowing the problem, being frustrated by the problem, being impacted by maybe you are a victim of the problem. Knowing the problem is not a plan. I don't say that to be harsh. I say it with love. Like, often, nobody understands pain more than those of us gathered in this. We know the pain, we felt the pain, and so we can speak about the pain. Knowing and feeling the pain is not a plan. You have to be energized. You have to be organized. You have to have a sophisticated plan. And here's my last point. And here's the brilliant thing, students, staff, those first three things, you don't need a dime. You can do those first three things for free. You could be angry or optimistic for free. You can, what I just told you about how do you organize people, you can say, what are you good at? And who else can you bring to the table? Those are just two ways to organize people. You could do that for free. You can develop a plan for free. The last thing, if you get those first three things moving in the same direction at the same time, you will start to see change. If you are energized, organized, and have a plan, you will fight in some battles and actually win. You'll fight in some elections and win. You will start to see change. The last thing that you need is you need the resources to actually grow and develop the first three things. You can do those first three things on a shoestring budget, but often we are fighting against people, corporations, and causes that are spending billions of dollars. Sometimes, like when we fight against mass incarceration, billions and billions of dollars a year are spent on hundreds of billions of dollars are spent on mass incarceration a year. And we are basically trying to solve a problem that gets hundreds of billions of dollars. We're trying to solve it with like thousands of dollars. And so even if you have a plan and you have the energized people and organized people, you at least need to start to develop the resources. So say, as I close, say there was a problem in Raleigh that we wanted to solve, and there's 225 of us, and we made an assessment of what are the skills we bring to the table, and each of you brought 2 more people, so now we're 700 strong. If I ask each of you to get $10, could you get $10? If you needed to get $10 and let me know in the chat. If you could get $10, could you do that? Yes, yes. It might be, listen, money is tight. We're in a pandemic, I understand. But suddenly, we now have $7,000. We're now 700 people strong, 700 skills strong, and we have $7,000. Is 7,000 7 million? No. But could we build a website with 7 million? Yes. We could maybe even hire somebody with $7,000. Part-time, we could potentially say, hey, could you work full-time for a month? How many of you would work full-time for $7,000 for 1 month? So all of a sudden, I see some people saying yes. So all of a sudden, in 20 minutes, we're now 700 strong, 700 skills strong, and we now have $7,000 that we could creatively think through how do we use this in a way that matters. So all of a sudden, when you're just energized, but not organized, when you don't have a plan, when you haven't said, hey, what resources can we bring to the table here? Often, we're only fighting with our frustration alone. And what I want you to understand is, in the tradition of Dr. King, in the tradition of Ella Baker, who in many ways was Dr. King's mentor and coach, they weren't just angry. They weren't just hopeful. They were organized, they had sophisticated plans, and they brought resources to the table. And often they didn't have a lot of resources, but they brought the resources they had to the table. And look at what they solved. We can do that. You can do that. With or without me. Like, we just have to know. Here's why I'm hopeful. When I look at most of our problems have not met energized people, organized people, a sophisticated plan that's well-funded. Most of our problems have met one or two of these things, but most of our problems have never seen all four of these things at one time. And so I still have hope, because I think when our problems face all of those steps, I think we'll be able to solve a lot more of them. I hope you don't mind that I took a practical route today. We're facing some practical problems. And I just want you to know that I believe Shaw is a place, Shaw is a community, a campus that can figure out how to solve these problems. And I believe in you, and I'm honored that that God placed our paths together today after a frustrating night, so that we can think about how we move forward. I'll close now, but I would be glad to take some of your questions, and I know many of you have already submitted them, but thanks for hearing me out, and I appreciate you. God bless you.
Thank you, Brother King. I'm Greg Howard, the Assistant Dean at the Divinity School here at Shaw University. And I want to say, indeed, an incredibly thought-provoking, practical, and challenging address. And we also want to thank you for this opportunity now to further engage you during this time of Q&A. And as you stated, we have a few students who have submitted some questions, as well as faculty and staff, partners and friends of Shaw that's tuned in. So for the next 30 minutes, if you can, we're going to try to engage as many as who has submitted these questions as I will share them with you. What is one of your recommendations as far as relates to the next step on a micro level or locally in moving toward protecting and preserving the voters' rights that we are fighting for, and again, as you stated earlier, have frustrated in light of last evening's mishap?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I work on college campuses, and I work with university staffs all over the country. The first thing that you have to do, so there is this macro problem of voting rights in America. And the truth is, there are even worldwide problems that we are a part of and we don't even really fully understand as a people, that there are forms of oppression happening around the world. But sometimes you see this big macro problem, you're like, I have no idea how we'll solve it. It has always helped me, and it's always a great strategy to first say, if we care about voting rights, what can we do at Shaw University? Like, let's not even think about Raleigh in this illustration, but what can we do at Shaw University to get 90% voter participation, you know, or the goal could be 100. What can we do to make voting easy? What do we do to make sure every student is registered, particularly in the era of the pandemic where our students are all over the country and might not even be local? How do we make sure that every student is registered? I'm just spitballing it. This may or may not go with policy. Can Shaw say voter registration is required for A, B, or C? You know, or can so strongly recommend it that Shaw makes sure there are ways to register to vote 24/7, that it's at the bottom of every email, that is in every email signature, that you can do it in the administration office. That if you register to vote and you show your voter registration, you get a $300 off of tuition. I'm just spitballing here. First, what can we make sure that we do to make, if we care about voting, how can we demonstrate that first at Shaw? And then the question is, how do we do it in the community that Shaw resides in and loves? How do we do it in that community? Then how do we fight for it in Raleigh? And then in the county, and then statewide. And so it is easy to be overwhelmed by the magnitude of problems nationally. But the first question is, and for students, when you move back to the residence halls, it may be first to say, how do we make sure everybody on my floor is registered?
Yeah.
How do we make sure everybody in the building is registered? And so as far as voting rights and voting registration, and hear me, voting is not the solution to every problem we have. I have focused on voting as in the shadows of what happened last night as we talk about Dr. King, but voting doesn't solve every problem we have. We vote more than any other people in the world. Like we mega vote, and it still doesn't solve all of our problems. In part because we vote so well, that's why they want to restrict our voting rights, because nobody shows up like we show up. But it's not just voting, it's running for office. It's not just politics, it's entrepreneurship. As I close for that question, all of us should have the peace of mind at the end of the night. And I have this, that at the end of each day, I know I did my best to fight for the problems I'm trying to solve. Now, I'm only trying to solve a narrow sliver of problems. So there are a million problems I can't solve, but I have the peace of mind of knowing I gave today my best with the problems that were in front of me. And I would like for all of us to have that peace of mind to know, like, I gave today my best shot.
Thank you. That helps us to, narrow the scope, so that we can tackle what is before us initially and then spread our wings out into larger communities. With that being said, as well as in response to your 4 steps of organizing and having a people that's deeply organized, in contrast to the day of King and what we know as the civil rights era, and the work done by SNCC and how we perceive them to be well organized. What, based upon your informed opinion, what threatens our communities today in coming together and organizing for such a just cause, where it appears that we're so fractured at times? What are some of those threats?
Well, I probably have 2 or 3 responses. The civil rights movement was fractured in all of its own unique ways. In the last year of his life, Malcolm X practically begged the forgiveness of Dr. King and many others that he had dogged for years and years and years. Like, Malcolm was on them day after day, month after month, with a lot of legit criticisms and some things that he later grew to feel like, I should not have said that. And he literally said, I regret saying a lot of what I said. And Malcolm literally traveled, in fact, down to Tuskegee to meet Dr. King, who happened to get arrested. But you'll see this beautiful picture of Malcolm X and Coretta Scott King at Tuskegee. And Malcolm went there for what he hoped would be this engagement. So the civil rights movement, you know, Dr. King in the last year of his life, I would, if you can, go to YouTube and type in King in the Wilderness. There's a documentary on Dr. King that's been uploaded to YouTube. It's not bootleg either. It's the production company put it up there. I think it's one of the most important documentaries on Dr. King. It's on the last year of his life. And he was so depressed because, in huge part, people stopped believing in him in the way that he was used to. His approval rating was terrible. Almost 80% of white Americans disapproved of him, and the majority of African Americans, almost 60% of Black folk in America, no longer respected Dr. King. And he was stung by that and a lot of other things. So the civil rights movement wasn't, we dehumanized the civil rights movement when we make it like they had no problems. I mean, they had real problems. Like Dr. King's best friend, Ralph Abernathy, wrote an autobiography. And his autobiography was it was like a PG-13 version of his life with Dr. King. And people in the civil rights movement were so angry with Ralph Abernathy for just telling a little bit of the truths about Dr. King's life that he was almost basically cast out of the civil rights community for just telling some of the human stories of his life. It was like it wasn't even a rated R version of his life with Dr. King. And there could be a rated R story to tell there. He told a PG-13 version and people put him out. I said that to say that the civil rights movement had a ton of challenges, and that we romanticize it now as if it didn't, but it truly did. At the core of that is the sexism in the civil rights movement was so severe. The misogyny in the civil rights movement was so severe that women, including women that were some of the most brilliant leaders in the world, weren't even allowed to speak on the mic, weren't even allowed to sit on the stage. Not even speak, just be on this. And I'm not talking about 100 years ago, I'm talking about modern history. So our movements have always had real challenges. And we need to accept that. And I hear people say all the time, like, you know, we need to do it more like the civil rights movement. I understand what they were saying. But lastly, there's something that is a double-edged sword for us. I'm really known for a lot of what I do on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and email, text. And I try to use these technological tools the best I can, but that's the sharp part of the sword. But it hurts us because a lot of people think they've done something when they've shared a post on Instagram or when they retweeted something. It's like, listen, okay, retweet it, but a retweet is not a vote. An angry face emoji is not a vote. So social media has convinced us sometimes that we've done a lot more than we really have. I have a whole chapter in my book where I talk about how in the 2018 election in Texas, where Ted Cruz was running against Beto O'Rourke, Beto was mentioned on social media almost 400% more than Ted Cruz. Beyonce posted on Instagram with a Beto hat, okay? And he lost. Now, maybe it wouldn't have been as close as it was without all of that social media. But he was mentioned 400% more than Ted Cruz, and Ted Cruz still won.
Wow.
The illustration is social media often makes us think we're much closer to change than we really are.
Yeah.
And because in your bubble, maybe everybody thinks like you think, but outside of your social media bubble, there's a whole nother world out there.
Got you. There's a student, Isaiah Foreman, who wants to ask this question. Certainly understanding, as you have shared, you were inspired in 2014 by receiving that video of Eric Garner's murder. But what keeps you motivated and driven to do the work of justice in light of so much resistance and oftentimes letdown, such as on last evening again?
Yeah, that's a great question, Isaiah. Thank you for asking it. There are a lot of things that keep me motivated. Probably three things that I could probably list 10 or 15, and I need all of them because the pressure to quit is often severe. The opposition that I get sometimes is so harsh, and not just from white supremacists, but from our own community. And it hurts and it stings. And if I didn't have 10 or 15 things to motivate me, I probably would have quit. And a lot of my dear friends have stopped doing this work. We have to remember that James Baldwin left the country. He was tired. It was too hard for him. He left. And not just James Baldwin. If you look at many of our greatest leaders, it was too much for them. So they moved to London and France, moved to Africa, moved to the Caribbean. Kwame Ture, others, Stokely Carmichael, others, they moved. They said, I'm done here. W.E.B. Du Bois, he said, I'm moving to Ghana. I'm leaving here. I'm tired of this place. So I said that to acknowledge that this country is exhausting. And there are probably three things that I have that help me endure, three key things. I have a plan. That was that third point that I made earlier. Because I have a plan and I'm not just winging it, when things around me fail or fall apart, I just look back to my plan and say, I'm gonna stick to this plan. Because my plan is not a 1 week plan. My plan is a plan for the rest of my life. I have goals and strategies and plans that keep me through a lot of failure, mistakes I've made. I have faith. My faith has been tested in a lot of ways. I'm writing an autobiography. I was a pastor for almost 15 years. I was a senior pastor of a church in Atlanta, and I went to seminary as well. And this country has tested my faith in a lot of ways, but I still have it. I still have faith in the belief that God wants more for us than we have right now, wants better for us. I have faith that God is a God of justice. Now, that's scary because justice can even come for you. And so often we want justice for everybody else, but justice is a serious thing. Lastly, I have 5 kids, and I have children in elementary school, middle school, high school, and college. My kids are at every stage of life right now. And I'm fighting for them. I'm fighting for your kids. I'm fighting for your grandchildren. I'm fighting for these beautiful students of Shaw. And there are times where I feel like giving up, where I even feel like throwing my own plan, getting my plan and throwing my plan in the garbage, or I feel like my faith is faltering. And then I look at my kids. I look at your kids. I look at students who I feel like hey, there are people here who need me and need us to keep pushing. I'm at my best when all three of those things, when my family, my plan, and my faith are all firing at the same time. But if they don't, I can hang on one of them at least until the others come back around.
Certainly. One other question
Yeah.
before we
Thank
have Dr. Moore, who is our executive director of the Center for Racial and Social Justice, to come in and share. In that response, I hear reflections of King, in that of your hope, when King reminds us what is the next when King reminds us we must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. And that change, again, is not inevitable, but
that's right.
We have that struggle or that plan. So this has been rich. But we do have a question from one of our former scholars, student government vice president, and now proud alum and supporter, asking of you to define revolutionary or revolutionist. It's a three-part question. Define it, sharing that you feel embody such spirit in this present day, and lastly, what is the hope that you have for your legacy?
That's a great question. We use a lot of words in ways that we probably shouldn't. Like we use the word brilliant too much. Like we say things are brilliant. It's not brilliant. It's good, but it's not. I don't know if it's brilliant. That word revolutionary is a word that we use a lot, but most revolutionaries do die fighting for what they want to fight for. And if we're thinking of Nat Turner or Gabriel Prosser, if we're thinking of John Brown, if we're thinking of not only Dr. King, but civil rights activists all over the country who died fighting in the civil rights movement. Well, they were fighting at the time for a complete revolution, a total change in how America actually operated. And when you fight for change on that level, it's dangerous. It can cost you, if not your life, it can cost you your living. Both Dr. King and Malcolm X at the end of their lives were virtually poor, almost completely broke and struggling. And being a revolutionary tends to mean that you opt out of a lot of the systems and structures that make you comfortable. And yet there are other ways to be revolutionary that don't require you to risk it all. We use our elders from previous generations as our best examples of revolution. But I have, for instance, I don't know if you all had any friends or if you saw any people that I've had friends who have left America. That's revolutionary, to just say, I'm moving on. It's also revolutionary to, I've struggled with this. I'm trying to give you some alternative answers. I have a couple of friends, and for a long time, this bothered me. They have decided that they're going to focus on love, beauty, they're not going to focus their life on confronting the pain of America, but they're going to focus their life on how to create beauty, if it's art, if it's music. For instance, I had a famous R&B artist who wrote me and told me, he said, Shaun, I want to do music, I want to maybe do some music that helps people in the movement. And I said, that's fine, please do that. I said, but man, we also need you to keep making love music, because like on Valentine's Day, if I'm with my wife, I don't need a song about the civil rights movement. When I'm with my wife, I need love music. Like there's a lot of ways to say, you know what? I'm not going to allow this place that is ours. We've done enough to claim this place as our own as well, but I'm not going to allow it to cause me to be miserable. I'm going to find another way to live my life with joy, peace, happiness. So, but revolution tends to mean fighting against the status quo of the way things are. Lastly, it may also mean saying hard things, even when it's wildly unpopular. And Dr. King, yeah, I like what you shared there, Robert. Dr. King, in the last weeks and months of his life, decided it was very important for him to speak out against the war in Vietnam, which was wildly unpopular. He decided he was going to focus a lot of his time and energy on poverty and economics, and he spent time calling out some people in the Democratic Party, and that can be painful. Like when I call out Joe Biden, the comments on my page are crazy. It's like, oh, y'all love this man way more than he loves you. And and so, you know, when I look to my own future, I have an organization that I'm leading, the Grassroots Law Project. We have almost 100 families right now that we're supporting, and who have cases and challenges and issues. And so I spent a lot of my time on that. For the first time in my life, and I talk about this publicly already, but I see a therapist every week, and who's helping me through all of the trauma that I've experienced from childhood all the way up to today. And I feel healthier as a person than I've felt in a very long time. And I'm looking forward to writing more. I'm really a writer at heart. And so I'm writing a book right now, and I spend maybe 3 or 4 hours a day writing it. It won't be ready until probably Christmas of this year. But so I'm working on that as well. So thank you for allowing me to answer these questions. But I enjoy my time with you, and my only regret is that we can't high five and hug and see each other. But let's believe that we will see each other face to face in the months and years ahead. Okay, I believe in you. I believe in Shaw. I believe in your president. I believe in these students, and let's keep on fighting. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. King. I am just very touched and very moved by your message. I have remarks all typed up, but I think I'm just going to have to toss those out the window, because I think, especially with the Center for Racial Justice and the historical legacy of Shaw, things that we're facing in the city of Raleigh, the state of North Carolina, you know, this is one of the things that we're trying to do, is inspire our children, our young people and our students to make change. And I had a friend who said, nothing changes unless everything changes. And, you know, to really bring home the truth of the civil rights movement, that it wasn't necessarily about integration, but like you said, the radical change of how this country functions. And I think we're trying to get to that point where we really have to think about how this country functions and who this country functions for. And I like the fact that, you know, you're struggling even with what your friends have said, but the whole idea of Black joy and Black beauty in and of itself is a revolutionary act. Our children that are being educated here at Shaw University, that in and of itself is a revolutionary act. The fact that we are educating this next generation of leadership. And sometimes we may be revolutionaries on our job. You know, there's things that each of us can do in our own space that we sometimes think, you know, we do have to be part of a large movement, but sometimes it's those little things that we can also do that can make a change. So I love the title of your book, Make Change. I think that's something that all of us need to read and our students need to study. So thank you for, you don't know how timely this was on so many levels, but I think everyone has gotten a lot from it. I've seen everybody taking notes. I'm taking notes. I think I have about 6 pages myself. And I've looked at the audience and everybody's writing your words. So I think we all took a lot from it. So thank you very much. So I'd like to close out with our annual Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. And I think it's fitting that we reflect on his words. And I think that you're pinpointing some of the things about Martin Luther King that a lot of us don't think about. And one of the things that I don't think a lot of people think about is what a wonderful and brilliant writer he was. We focus on snippets of his speeches, but we really don't read King. So I'm always telling my students to be sure that you read Dr. King. So here's just a few words that I wanted to close on, and I think it fits everything that you said and everything that he was. And he stated that courage is an inner resolution to go forward despite obstacles. Cowardice is submissive surrender to circumstances. Courage breeds creativity. Cowardice represses fear and is mastered by it. Cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when we must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but one must take it because it is right. And we're in such times today. We have heard the courageous and inspiring story of Shaun King today, who chose to stand up even when it wasn't expedient, even when it was convenient, but because it was the right thing to do. For our audience, and especially our students, we must stand up now. We must stand up today to fight for our rights and the creation of a just, fair, and equitable society. We must be inspired by the example of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who paved the way, and by those who have chosen to carry on the mantle of this generation, such as Shaun King. It will be up to the next generation of activists, our students here at Shaun University, who will continue the legacy of freedom and justice for all. I'd like to thank our president, Dr. Paulette Dillard, and everyone who was a member of the Martin Luther King Day Planning Committee for all of your hard work. And now I would like to introduce Mr. Masango Ndombe, the acting vice president of Shaun University's Divinity School Graduate Student Government Association, who will provide the benediction and the closing.
Good afternoon. Please receive this blessing and benediction in faith and hope. Beloved, your dreams should not go unnoticed. God knows your dreams. Now dare to dream out loud, so the world may discover what you and God can do. Release every God-given dream so that others may be inspired to do likewise. Take this opportunity to reset your dream cycle. And now, to the author of every good and noble dream, we give all honor and praise. For Christ and humanity, amen. We would like to thank everyone for attending Shaw University's annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. May we all continue to be champions of Dr. King's vision. Stay safe and have a wonderful afternoon.